This tutorial is designed to build on what you learned in the first Microsoft RazorPage tutorial. And at the present time, the most current version of .NET is .NET 9, which is also very similar to .NET 8. Either one should work fine with this project. And what we're going to be doing is creating multiple models that share information through foreign keys. And after we get those models created, we are going to be adding Entity Framework and generating a context file, which basically tells Entity Framework how to create our database tables. And we'll be using that context file for seed data. There's a couple different ways you can get seed data into the database. You can add the seed data to the context file, or you can create a separate file. So in this project, we're going to add it to our context file. And then we're going to generate the Razor page views. Once we get the views generated, we are going to go ahead and run migrations, which is going to create our database. And we'll check that out to make sure it looks good. We will test out all of the CRUD functions on the different pages to make sure they are all working properly. And once we know everything is working right, and we're not going to make any changes to our models or the views, then we're going to move forward with styling. We always do the styling last because with the frameworks, if you change a model, you have to run migrations again because that's going to change your database. And the ripple effect is that it changes your views. And you can manually code those changes, or you can delete the pages that you scaffolded and redo them. So redoing the scaffolding is a lot easier than manually making changes. So that is why I always recommend doing the styling last. Okay, so one little word of warning, because I know a lot of you Google for information or problem solving. Some of you use ChatGPT. It's a little more difficult doing that when you are using specific versions of .NET and .NET frameworks, because different versions do things differently. So if you are going to Google for help or go into ChatGPT, you need to make sure that the database is updated and is current. For example, ChatGPT's database, I asked it what the last update was, how far is it current to? And when I checked, it was June 2024, and that is before .NET 9 was implemented. So it has .NET 8, but not .NET 9. For this project, it doesn't make any difference, but that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. You really need to be careful. Okay, so what we're going to end up creating is a little workout app. It's going to end up having 3 tables: users, exercises, and workout logs. And so this is what it's going to look like when we're done, at least the main landing pages and the privacy page. And so we'll give you a little bit of an overview of Razor Pages, and then we're going to get started working on the app. And the way we're going to proceed with this is all of the videos are in the hands-on. And so we'll cover the information pertaining to that hands-on, and then we will go through and do it. Okay, so what are Razor pages? They are lightweight. It's a lightweight page-based framework used to build full-stack web applications in .NET. It's ideal for small to medium-sized web applications, not super large applications. MVC is better for that. But also if you just need simple CRUD functionality, and CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete, okay, which is pretty much all of your database functions. Okay, and it's really good for form-based applications, which is what we are creating. We do get into MVC in our 218 class. In fact, we take a deeper dive into everything that you're going to be learning here. We take a deeper dive into all of it. So this is kind of, a little introduction to this whole world of .NET frameworks. As far as what design pattern Razor pages use, um, there is disagreement in the developer community because it is very similar to MVC, which is model, view, and controller, but Razor pages don't have a controller. Each view has kind of its own little controller behind it. So it's got some code behind that is acting as a controller. So it's a little bit different. Technically, it would be a page controller pattern. Okay? So if you want to know more about page controllers, I've got a link, but that is technically what we are using. This little graphic kind of shows you how the process works, and I did create this in Lucid Charts, which is free, just in case you guys wanted to know. But we've got the user, and the user is interacting with the view. Okay, so that is where their interaction takes place. When they key in the URL for the app, it is the landing page view that they will see, and then they will select commands based on, what is in the menu. And so the view has some C# code behind it in something called a page model. Okay, and so when you are looking at a view and you select something from a menu, that is the request. Okay, and the request goes to the code behind, which is the page model. And in database applications, typically the request involves either viewing data, creating data, or changing data. Okay, so the request is going to require some type of data, which is connected to our model classes. Okay, and so we've got the request coming in, and then we've got the interface with the database, which is also done in the page model. Okay, and then whatever data is retrieved, okay, either data or confirmation. Okay, and so we get some kind of a response back. That response is then returned to the page model, which then displays the correct view and notifies the user. So this is how that whole process works. Now, to create a Razor page project from start to finish, and you guys should be familiar with this already, obviously you create the Razor page project in Visual Studio. Then you create a model folder and you create your model class files. You're going to need to add properties in those class files, the same properties that we've been adding in the Council Labs. Okay, they're just normal properties. And then to provide information to Entity Framework when it is creating the database, we add data annotations. And those annotations can have things like size, column size. We can actually change the name of a column if for some reason we want it different than the property name. And we also use data annotations for keys and things like that. We can set minimum values, maximum values, all those types of things with data annotations. Once we get done adding the properties and the data annotations, and this does include foreign keys, okay, that's super important. We are going to add Entity Framework to the project. Okay. Once we've got Entity Framework added, then we are going to scaffold the first model class, and we are going to generate a context file. And when that file is generated, it is placed into a data folder that is also generated. And then we will also be generating the UI views. After that, we have to edit the context file and add DB set properties for the remaining classes, and then we will scaffold those remaining classes. When it does the generation of the context class, it will add a database connection string to appsettings.json, and it will also add database dependencies to program.cs. So we will take a look at those so you can see what is added when the context class is created. In the 218 class, you manually create context classes, and you will also manually add the connection strings and database dependencies. Okay, so in this class, because it's your introduction, we're going to generate them. Then, after we've got the Entity Framework added, we've scaffolded everything, we are ready to add seed data to the context file. Now you can either put the seed data in the context file directly, or you can create a separate file for seed data. In this project, we are going to put it in the context file. Once you're done with all of that, you can do migrations. And what migrations do, you add a migration that creates the code necessary to generate the database. Okay. Once you've done add migration, then you will update database, and that executes the migration code to create your database and tables. Okay. So performing migrations is a two-step process. Once we perform the migrations, we are going to go into SQL Server Object Explorer, which is part of Visual Studio, and we will take a look at our database and tables to make sure they were created correctly. And what we need to look for are the columns, the primary keys, and the foreign keys. Okay. And if all of that looks correct, we are good to go. Okay, so assuming everything looks correct, we can run and test the application. Okay, and then when you run the application, usually you see things that you need to tweak. So at that point, we can make some adjustments. We definitely are going to need to add commands to the navigation bar. We're going to want to add some styling to the project. And then once it is completed, we can deploy the application. Now, in this particular class, we do not deploy the application. That is something that we do in the 213, the 255 class and the 218 class. We do deployment. The reason we don't do it in this class is we use a server that will give students 2 months free. And so we use those 2 months when you are taking 218 and 255 at the same time. So without further ado, we are going to create the project. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a new project here. And I want razorPage. All right, so this is what I want. C# is the language, and I recently had to reinstall this. So let me select that and click on Next. All right, we are going to be calling this workout, I believe. Let me move this to my other screen. Okay, and then you're going to select where it goes. I think I'll just leave it right in the main repository folder and click on Next. And I'm going to go with the most current version. However, you can choose either version in this product or in this tutorial. We're not doing authentication in this class. That is something that is covered in the 218 class. So we're going to go ahead and click Create. Oops, I had better, let me go back. All right, I fixed this so it was moved into a different folder. But when you guys create this, what you should see is the project name workout. And then by default, it doesn't create a whole lot of folders, but you'll see, www root, pages, app settings.json, and program.cs. And so right off the bat, this is what you have. You can run the app before you do anything. Now you can just hit run. At this point, it's not going to do a whole lot. We don't have a backend database or anything else, but it will run. And let me pull this over. So there's a couple of pages that you can display by default, and this is what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and close this little window. And at this point in time, we are now ready to add our models. And that is going to be in the next video. One word of warning, you do not want to rename your project. Or once we start creating folders and files, you really need to be careful renaming things in here because everything is wired together. What do I mean by that? So if we go into pages and let's take a look at the landing page, the index. Okay, and let's look at the code behind. Okay, so you can see the namespace is based on the project, and we are under workout pages. Okay, so that is what it's got for the namespace. Now, if I go and change this, it kind of messes up these conventions and breaks the project. So you really want to be careful of making changes. So I would discourage it until you know more of what you're doing. Right? So avoid renaming things at this point.